Shannon and I are going to kind of have just a conversation, and I may not be clicking a whole lot, and so it might kind of feel like I'm staying on the same thing. I might have to click this or that or whatever, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of start talking some general concepts, and we're trying to kind of create a little teaser for a thing that we're going to call the Developer's Notebook. And basically what the Developer's Notebook is clear since 2001, we have recorded the entire story of everything we've done inside of Adilas. And now when I say we have recorded this, basically this is my notebook, so it's only a portion of the story. Instead of like seeing every single angle and who else is doing different things, this is my angle and how I'm basically kind of presenting it back to the different people. What we're trying to do is eventually it's going to end up being in ideas and sharing. And we're going to kind of say how this whole concept kind of came about and what are some of the different pieces. Where I was at right here on the screen, and just real quick, this is a separate little section, but it reminded me of it. When I clicked on ideas and sharing, basically what it has here is it says, we love ideas. This is the future home for being able to do all sorts of stuff, monthly updates, ideas, wish lists, user forums, what is our current projects, that kind of stuff. For the time being, because we don't have all of those pieces done and or fully connected, what we did is we temporarily put on and say, hey, if you want to submit us an idea or you want some like rates on your custom codes, this is kind of a small little pricing list, if you will. So basically what we do straight up is if you want to submit an idea or you have a suggestion, it's absolutely free. We love this. Probably close to 50% of Adilas is actually already 100% built on ideas and different things that people have actually done to be like, oh, what if you did this? And what if you did this? And we run with it. Just last night we launched 2 new things. We had 2 people on the training call and they had some requests and suggestions, and we implemented 2 new ones last night. On that same call yesterday, we probably had another 3 things that were added to our tick list. So basically what we'll do is those will start feeding in. The way it works is if you submit an idea, it's basically for free. Okay, so you submit it, we don't charge you, but we can't promise any sort of timing as far as like when we're actually going to be able to release that or get to it. But we do record any idea that you have, even if it's way out there. We love way out there. Okay? If it changes, and what I'm kind of doing right here is I'm going to tell you right here, if it goes into a custom or a priority level, we have to charge for it. We have to be able to support what we're doing and all that kind of stuff. And so basically, if you have a general thing and it hits the general tick list, we'll do it, we'll add it in. Every person who's using Adilas automatically gets these new features and tools. It's a way that we can kind of help share the love. If it comes into this level where it gets into priority or custom, basically the difference is custom means, okay, it's not standard and it's not one of the current settings, but I need it now. That kind of almost turns it into this customer priority level. When we do that, we have a base development rate at $100 an hour. As an option, this is kind of cool, but later on where we're headed with this is actually being able to take all of Adilas, turning every type and every function into what's called an API. And so an API is a way that you can technically program your own processes, your own mappings, your own return and reports, your own checkpoints, your own flow, even your own skins, what it looks like, how we're getting the data, how we're collecting it. And then eventually it still goes into these little containers that we've created. So basically that's called an API, and so instead of us filling it out, what ends up happening is if you have somebody who's local who works for you that's a techie guy, you could have them build it, or you could go to a different company and say, hey, I want to use this product, but I want to tweak it in this and this and this way. It's all totally custom, and then basically they would give you a quote, hey, I can make that happen in $1,000 or whatever it might be. So instead of paying literally hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars for custom write-up software, you could basically virtually ride on top of the Adilas platform, and then you could basically say, you mean if I spend $5,000 with this little company right here, I can get this exactly to the T, exactly how I need? That's awesome. So instead of spending hundreds of thousands, you're saying, cool, I got a subscription with Adilas, I get everything that's built in, and then I'm able to build on top of that custom however I really want it. So that's kind of a cool little feature. So just in general, we charge $100 per hour if we're doing custom stuff. If you have data imports, you want to import your parts and your inventory items, your customers, your vendors, we charge $100 an hour. By default, usually most of them, unless it's just crazy, it's under $200. Okay, we can get that stuff imported pretty darn quick. If you have a simple document, say you are selling things and you basically have a custom PDF form that needs to be specific, or the state requires you to use specific documentation, you basically provide us with the documentation, and what we do is we basically convert it, and we already have a section built into Adilas that allows us to tuck these little custom documents in. And once again, it's just settings and permissions, but basically if I was running and I had a special document, I do my normal invoice inside of Adilas, and then I click on this little link that says paperwork, and all of a sudden any custom documents that are assigned to me are right there. I click on it, and we virtually can bridge any of those pieces that you need. So if you need special customer fields in there, if you need special invoice fields, if you need whatever, this custom document thing, usually when we do things, it's kind of at a super dynamic level. We can add custom documents to any of the 12 major players. That's users, that could be for HR documents. You could do vendors, that could be for ordering type stuff or requisitions. So the 12 main players, and I'm not going to go through all of the different little things, but you basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick temporary little step. I'm just going to open up a new window and go to a quick little map. And I'm actually going to click on a little map right here that actually has one that's kind of zoomed in so you can see it if you wanted to. Here's your main players, okay? Your main players are expense receipts, deposits, you have vendors, users, customers, invoices, quotes, parts and general inventory, POs or purchase orders, your stock units, elements of time, and the other one that we haven't really talked a whole lot about are user-maintained balance sheet items, which are kind of special things. Like, say Adilas is tracking everything that it's actually doing, but it's like, oh, what about this certain asset or this company vehicle or this machine that I use to do my things that's technically part of your stuff? What you do is there's actually a spot inside of the balance sheet homepage that you can create your own little objects that actually help you hold the pieces that we are not tracking. And so tons and tons of Adilas feeds up to the balance sheet. We call that system-maintained balance sheet items. And then if we are missing something or if you need something special, you can actually create your own object and then map and track ins and outs and all that kind of cool stuff. So what I was basically doing is long story short, we were talking about custom documents. And so any of those 12, and I think I hit on all of the different 12 as far as what they are, but those are our main pieces. You can have custom documents. If you want full development time, or if you have a certain project you have, we even have options where you can go clear down to the match level, which basically is like, oh my goodness, we'll pay $5,000. If you guys are willing to pitch in $5,000, we could get this cool little feature done. And what we do is if we see value in that, we're like, cool, we'll put in $5,000 worth of development time. We'll add that up. And basically what it does is it just makes Adilas have more and more tools that we can basically go sell. If things are on a custom level, where we want to put the custom level is either custom documents, custom reports, or stuff like that. If it starts getting into total interface stuff, that's where it needs to go to the API level. Anything that we develop and we can put underneath Adilas and we're paying for a portion or we're doing some stuff, we try to use it again as a feature for other customers. And so literally what we do is we kind of play a little bit of a piggyback type system. So what the piggyback system means is, wow, I'm writing millions of dollars worth of development. If I put in X thousands of dollars, whatever it is, I can get the feature that I want that satisfies my need. And then Adilas, we basically like to harness that and then offer that as well as other pieces. And so technically the pieces that you're using right now have been other pieces that people have paid for earlier. and it's kind of a piggyback system. It's kind of the way the system's set up. Anyway, this is just kind of really quick. This was under ideas and sharing off of the map, just a quick little small pricing guide. As far as the monthly fee, the only required fee to use Adilas is a monthly fee. And we determine that by how many locations you have, how many employees you have, and roughly what your volume is. And usually we can tell by your sales volume. And it's not even necessarily a dollar amount. It's more of like, hey, say for instance I'm a dealership. Hey, I'm a dealership. We do 35 units a month, okay? Well, because you're a dealership, we know that you're going to be using stock units and possibly floor plan and possibly some of these other pieces. So we would basically price you according to that. If you're a small retail person, you could be like, hey, we do X hundreds of invoices, or I say I do 20. I mean, I'm really small. It doesn't matter. What we do is we basically base your monthly according to that scale. What do we think you're going to be using of Adilas? Which pieces do you want, or which pieces may you eventually want? And we kind of make a little, basically, to be 100% honest, it's an educated guess. We basically say, I think that they're going to be about this level. We start at clear as low as $17 a month, and this is per location, per month, and it goes clear up. If I was going to tell you an average, and I'm just trying to be honest right here, on average, most clients are right between the $47, or just under $50, to just under $200. That seems to be the spot that it's very, very good, where it's a business that's going and moving, but yet it still needs all of these enterprise type tools. That seems to be the spot. We have other clients that are technically paying us hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and people who have paid us thousands and thousands. What you need to do, and one of the scary things about this is you're like, oh my goodness, this is a monthly fee. Think of your cell phone. Can you live without it? Probably not. How much are you paying per month? 60, 80, 100? Well, guess what? You could get Adilas for close to that same price, okay? That's what you need to think of it as, almost like as a service, and then you just kind of go from there. On average, if we don't see your business, and it's what we would kind of consider small, so say you have under 10 employees or 5 to 10 employees or less, you're probably going to be in the $100 range. Most things will come in underneath that, unless all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, that's huge volume, or we have tons of locations. If you have multiple locations, we'll give you a break. If you have multiple corporations, like you have different entities, and you want to kind of mix and combine them together, or you just want to service them all independently, we'll give you a break there. We love to work with you. We don't have a pricing matrix specifically out on the web right now, and the reason is every single business is so different. And even if I took the same business, say I took a dealership, well, what size is your dealership? I mean, you can just kind of think, is it the one that's on the corner that kind of has 5 or 6, or is it the one that's taking up 4 physical city blocks? Like, you have to literally realize that even though you're doing the same basic functions, it kind of depends on volume. How many locations and what's your volume? Basically, what is Adilas going to have to store for you? And so that's how we base your monthly fee. Okay. So Shannon, we were kind of talking. That was totally a side note on.
That's okay. You know much more than I, and they're going to learn a lot more from you.
Okay. So we were just kind of talking ideas and sharing, and all I did was I clicked on this, and it threw me into a whole tangent on talking price. Okay. Currently, that's all that's underneath the ideas and sharing. But ideally, where we're headed with this is actually going into the developer's notebook. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break and kind of drink some water right now. Can you just kind of start the conversation? We're just going to kind of bat it back and forth a little bit. And what you've been doing, just to kind of preface it, is you've been actually starting to record all of these little pen and paper things. So basically my model is breaking, and I need to upgrade it into a database model, which I'm going to put it right into Adilas, but I can't do it fast enough to actually put it in and still do the other pieces that I want. So I'm using a pen and paper tool, and I've done it for years, clear since 2001, and I'm basically having you start taking some of these pieces of the puzzle, and what we're hoping to do, it literally is ideas and sharing. If you like what we're doing, great. We hope you'll use Adilas. If not, we hope that you can take what we've got and run forward with that. We're literally willing to share, and this is kind of our donation and our participation in this whole project. And so I hope that people see what we've done, and they learn from our mistakes, and at some future point, we know that we're going to be leapfrogged. It's just a matter of time. Like, we are playing this game with that knowledge, and so what we're going to do is, in order to protect ourselves, we're actually going to share. So it might sound random, but I was actually at a meeting with a guy, and he said, how are you protecting yourself? And the only thing that I can come up with is, I'm going to protect myself by sharing. And then all of a sudden, we're no longer a target, if that makes sense. It's basically like, hey, it's common knowledge. Why don't you just take it and use it however you want it? So Shannon, I'm going to turn it to you, and we'll kind of start a little bit of a conversation. And we can go to any point in time. What I'm trying to do here is just a little bit of a teaser of what we've already done and where we're going, and even just talking back and forth. We're just kind of catching the conversation. Okay?
Okay, great. Is there any particular direction you'd like me to head with this?
Why don't you tell us just roughly, real quick, where you're at and where you think you're going and where you think you want to kind of take it. Like, basically, you have access to notebooks right now, and you've started. But where would you like it to go? And just let's not even pretend that we're live right now, okay? Let's just talk. So this is just Brandon and Shannon batting back and forth about the developer's notebook.
So I don't feel like I'm necessarily the one with the vision.
Okay.
I'm more or less following your vision for what you would like the developer's notebook to be. But I think that's become a little bit more clear as I've talked to you the last couple of times. Understand right now, I'm mainly making prep files, text files that we will load into the database later, and then they'll be searchable by date, by month, by subject, by whatever, just how everything is searchable in here. Okay, I want to learn about this, or maybe they have some brainstorming ideas on this, which I really do see as a huge asset and a tool, because you'll be able to have open access to all of that information that has been hours and hours of brainstorming. Or some things I find interesting as I go through the notebook are how long it even takes to, how continually you'll work on one project maybe, or something like that, just to see the history unfolding of how it's been built up or where it's gone. Yeah, so there are some really neat aspects of the developer's notebook that I definitely think could be extremely beneficial for anyone else that's interested in either learning and or piggybacking on what you guys have done, or taking pieces they want and going forward, or anything.
Awesome. Well, we actually want people to piggyback on this, and I think it's kind of fun. And like I said, protection through sharing. It's kind of a random concept. But and some people might be offended by this, but basically I'm going to refer it to a Bible story, okay? And what happened was there's this prophet. His name is Elisha, okay? And there's a huge famine in the land. And at one point, somebody brings him some stuff. And if you want to know where this is in 2 Kings, okay? So basically, Elisha the prophet, he's the prophet, and this guy brings him tons of food, like, hey, here's some food for you. Let's save the prophet type thing. And what the prophet said is, you know what? The Lord has commanded me, let's give this to the people. And the person who brought it was like, oh my goodness, are you nuts? What are you doing? And he said, no, no. The Lord said, give it to the people. They'll take what they want, and there will be plenty left over. So he finally ends up doing it, and it helps the people out. Later on, not more than, say, 2 or 3 chapters later, there's another story. Elisha is still the prophet. And some guy, I mean, it's bad. The city is under siege. Everything is going wrong with this particular process, okay? Israel's under siege. They're starving out. They're basically starving out, and they're under siege. It's terrible, okay? So what ends up happening is Elisha the prophet makes a prophecy, says, there will be great bounty in the land, okay? And what ends up happening then is the person who originally asked the question was like, yeah, right, because like everything is negative at this point. And so what ends up happening is basically there's 4 guys outside of the city, these guys who have leprosy. And they can't be inside the city because it's kind of part of the law of Moses. And so technically they're living outside of the city walls. And it gets so destitute, what ends up happening is they look at each other and they're like, dude, we're going to die if we stay here. Like, we can't make it. If we go into the city, we're going to die there and we're not allowed to there. why don't we go check out the army that's trying to attack us and see if they have any food. And if they kill us, guess what? We're going to die anyway. And so literally what happens is these 4 lepers, this is like in 2 Kings 7. Don't quote me exactly. I'm totally pulling this out of my memory here. But basically what happens, these 4 guys go over to the camp of the Syrians. And they get there and they're like, oh my goodness, it's the mother lode. There isn't a single soul in the entire camp. Food, clothes, riches, you name it, tents, fully stocked. And they're like, sweet, let's grab some stuff. And so they grab some stuff, and then what they do is they go back and they make multiple trips, and they're like, oh my goodness, we just hit the jackpot. And eventually what they do is they're kind of like, dude, maybe we should tell somebody, like, I know that there's a bunch of starving people there. And so what they do is they actually go and they knock on the door, and they're like, hey, just so you know, we happened to go over there, and we just checked it out because we were hungry, and there's nobody over there. And so the Israelites were very worried. They're like, oh, this sounds like a trap. What if they're waiting, or what if something's going on? And so what ended up happening is that they sent out a couple people to check it out. And the story was true. Basically, there was all of this stuff, goods and goods and goods and goods. The pillage of war was right there in a camp, unattended. What ended up happening is the Syrian army had heard a huge noise, and they thought that the Israelites had actually hired like the Egyptians or some other army to come in and wipe them out. And so they bailed out and left everything, basically like, let's just save our skins. And they all went home and left everything. And so basically what ended up happening is, to fulfill that prophecy that the prophet had made, all of Israel was able to go into the camp of the Syrians, and they were able to get food and clothes and all this kind of stuff, and they brought it back. And it was kind of a really interesting story, but the whole thing is dealing with sharing and even kind of doing some stuff. I'm not trying to tout our horn. I would actually say that the brains behind this is Stephen Birkencotter, who is one of the owners of Adilas. And basically he's used me as his developer, and he has kind of said, we have a cool way to do this. Why don't we try to do this and this and this? And we've just experimented for 10 years. Well, we're kind of getting to the point where we actually are kind of like those lepers going, maybe we should tell somebody about this. And so technically part of this developer's notebook is, you know, we need to share some of the stuff that we've stumbled on almost by accident. It wasn't our goal. Our goal was to solve a current business problem. We had to track inventory. Who's on it? What's going on with these deals? And then as it happened over time, what ended up happening is it eventually kind of started folding out into different pieces of the puzzle. And so I don't know if that helps at all, but that's kind of some of the direction. That's why we want to share.
I love it. I love it. In fact, I was thinking about Adilas this last weekend when I went to a midwifery conference, because one of the aspects they brought up is just sometimes infighting amongst businesses or against people that could potentially be in competition with one another, which that's obviously something that drives business, is competition. But we just briefly just spoke about the idea of the abundance model, that there really is enough to go around. And when you view it that way, more people are helped and served and serviced. And you can do so much more than if you just keep it all to yourself and you didn't let it out. So, yeah.
Awesome.
I think that's great.
So
I love that you use that Bible story.
And this is just my personality. I personally am a student of the gospel, okay? And I'm not trying to push my religion on you, but I will say that part of this whole puzzle is a lot of prayer, and it's a lot of stuff like this. I'm not trying to say that this is an application inspired by God, but if I was a plumber, I would pray for help in how to make the different connections and stuff work. I happen to be a developer of a web application, so I pray for help, and he helps me in that way. The same way as if you're a midwife and you're helping someone with birthing, you're going to be praying your guts out that that person is actually going to make it through that process, okay? It's very important, and I would give huge credit where credit is due, and basically I'm willing to share, our company is willing to share, and this is the direction that we're going to go in. And so I'm really excited. Even these seminars we're going to do, we're doing a 3 days a month free seminar. If you come to where we're actually having the class, we'll buy you lunch. It's kind of a funny joke, okay? So basically, here's the joke. What does Adilas do? And it's kind of like, in our minds, we literally want to go, did you bring a lunch? Because it can do so much, and you're going to love it, and you're going to be able to do all of these cool things. But I was on the phone the other day with my cousin, and I was talking to him, and he's like, wow, that sounds like a lot of different things. I'm really interested. So like, what is it? Like, and everybody wants to kind of box this thing into a thing. If you're going to box it, basically this is a world. You literally are in almost this virtual data fantasy world that is kind of being created, and it's kind of interesting. Like, he kept saying, no. Is it like sales? Yeah. Is it like inventory tracking? Yeah. Is it customers? Yeah. Like, it just keeps going and going and going. We've literally been here for 3 days. This is the last hour of the training thing, and it just kind of talks about some of the different pieces of the puzzle. But we don't have it all. Guess what? You should see our tick list. It's huge. It's huge. Matter of fact, our tick list is so huge, I can't even get to all of it. But if we share it, somebody else might be like, oh my goodness, why didn't they do that? It's not that we don't want to. It's just a matter of what we call a burning platform. Shannon, I know we've talked about burning platforms at different times, but how could that actually create change and or movements? Like, if we're just chatting, let's just talk about burning platforms.
Essentially, I think
There's a burning platform.
Burning platform kind of forces change. I mean, your example is, we're on a platform in the middle of the ocean, and we ask people to jump. Hey, would you guys be willing to jump off this? You're not going to get anyone that's going to jump off that. But the minute the platform is burning, they will voluntarily jump off themselves. And just creating an instance, I guess, that essentially forces that action. And not that you're trying to do it in a negative way or anything. I think burning platforms, you may see them that way, but it's actually a real benefit and a real blessing because it initiates change.
Okay, awesome. I agree, and it does kind of help stimulate that whole type of thing that's going on. I'm going to change from the burning platform. I don't want to think everybody's thinking that we're burning down everything, but basically it does stimulate change. And so as you're going through some of this developer's notebook, and just as we're kind of talking about it, what are some burning platforms that you've seen us hit? Because guess what? We hit them. You're going to hit them in your daily life. Like we were talking to Ray there, and he's like, oh my goodness, I have customers, and I have to do this, and I have to track them. And if they come back 3 months later, how do I know what I actually built for them? And if the IRS says, hey, I need to see that invoice, you need to produce this kind of stuff. And if you're just at a paper model or a certain model, you may not be able to produce some of those things. And so basically, you can actually do this so you can help. But
one comment that maybe doesn't particularly answer your question that I was thinking of when you were just, after you finished discussing some of your Bible stories and some of the other things. Yeah, exactly. I also believe in God, but regardless of what you believe, I think one of the things that Adilas does is based upon principle learning. And when you're based upon principles, they apply to every situation, every setting, in every instant. And basically the idea that if you are working by principles, they apply all the time, in any context, in any situation, at multiple levels. So if you're thinking static versus dynamic, principles are dynamic. And so when you have these underlying principles, they apply to every aspect of your puzzle piece. I know some that you guys talk about are permissions and settings and just how those affect, but also time but also even at a much smaller level, not even huge Adilas concepts, ideas, but even just within everything that you brought up within, whether it's an invoice or a PO or a statement or whatever the case may be, a lot of the principles are the same. A lot of the ideas are the same. So once you understand the principles behind what you're trying to do, now all of a sudden it's not like, oh, now I have to learn everything all over again for POs. Oh, now I have to learn everything all over again for doing my statements. it just makes sense because it's all the same ideas, it's all the same principles. Like, oh, okay, that doesn't work, then I better go edit it.
Yeah.
Oh, if that doesn't work, then I better go figure out what I need to do. Oh, I want this. I just have to find where I switch for it because it's there.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay, good, good. I've heard of other people even say problem-based learning. Like, why would you need to do something unless you had a problem? You virtually have a burning platform. You're like, oh my goodness, I need to get at this. What do I need to do? I either need to go to training, I need to look it up, I need to check my help file, or I need to just try something.
Yeah.
And I think if you're willing to try, I think that's awesome. Another concept that we've talked about, just for fun, is one called try-storming. And basically what it is you're going to brainstorm still, but instead of brainstorming it and getting it to the picture perfect level and then doing it, if you're try-storming it, you're like, I have brainstormed it to this full level. At some point, I need to start jumping in and swimming to see if this thing's really going to fly. Because there may be pieces that you didn't know about that weren't attached. And so we do that time and time and time again. We come back, we circle around, and even users are actually telling us. So if we have hundreds and hundreds of people in here and they're like, you know what, that's fine and dandy, but did you ever think of doing it this way? Well, I promise you, we didn't think of that, okay? Or maybe we didn't use the time element or the volume element. So just for instance, Ray at Tubes and Hoses, he has tons and tons of customers that are what are called his AR customers, his accounts receivable. Well, guess what? If Adilas only has a couple people that owe us, and guess what? We're going to be like, oh, I have to do statements today, and say I have to do like 10 or 15 for people that just owe us who aren't on like an automatic payment type system, a credit card or a check or something like that, and we're trying to collect. Well, to do 10 statements, it's not a big deal, but what if your business model, what if you quadrupled that? And then what if you quadrupled the quadruple? Does it change how flow has to happen? So there's a ton of ways that Adilas is even going to be tweaked out later on in the future that are just amazing. And there's no physical way we can see that until you literally get it out into the hands of the people who are using it. What if you quadrupled a quadruple a quadruple? Would you want something? I guarantee you'd want an automatic thing that was like, go find me everybody who owes it, put it on autoplay, boom, run this thing out, okay? Then if I need to have somebody print it, let's print them 10 at a time so we can shove this thing towards the printer or whatever. But like, that's problem-based learning in a way. It's kind of like, oh my goodness. You'll go to a level, and we were talking earlier about all of these different tools, and I'm not sure if you remember that, but like we said, paper and pencil, great tools. Spreadsheets, great tools. Databases. But each one of these things, you can kind of break it as soon as you add more and more and more, or you do less and less and less. Like on some of these models, what if you had the most awesome model, but what if it was millions of dollars to play? That technically breaks the model because it's so expensive. It's like, forget it, I'll deal with this. And so like, there's lots of different things that break these models, and so what we do is we kind of have to figure out this nice flexible interface and way that things are connected. So I think that it's interesting. I'm excited about the future. I'm excited to see where things are going. And it's fun to even relic in the past and say, where were we? What happened? Why did we do that? Oh my goodness, remember that. You know, like, we're human. We are totally human. And we have weaknesses and frailties. And it's kind of interesting. So Shannon, just for fun, you actually have my notebook right here. Why don't you flip back to a couple pages? It's currently, right now, it's 3/28/13. Why don't you flip back to, say, like December 20th of 2012? And why don't I just show you which one it is, but I want you to, just for fun, even to kind of show some of these different little burning platforms that we have, I'm going to show you something real quick. Right here. Shannon, can you just kind of read this little entry? Now this is just a human talking, okay? And so let me preface this real quick. What's going on is the tick list is growing. The features are coming. People are asking for more and more and more. Some people want to simplify. Some people want to go way out to the next triple level. You know, like, so all these almost opposing type things, lots and lots of pressure. I'm just human, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to crack type thing. Can you just kind of, just generally, can you just kind of read it? And I know that this kind of exposes my underside, but guess what? I am as human as the next person is.
Yeah, maybe you'd want to read it.
No, go ahead. I don't want to cry. No, just kidding.
Where are we headed? Do I know? Am I okay with that? What would I like to change? I have so many questions and my head is in competition for which emotion to follow. It's kind of weird. I'm at peace, yet anxious, scared, yet excited, overwhelmed, yet driven, doubting, yet confident. It's really hard to pin down my thoughts. I can be focused like a laser beam and in no time flat, be as random and spread out as light hitting a rough yet reflective surface. I feel in control, yet desperately grasping for stability. I keep seeing life lessons being played out before me. I'm part of them, then watching from the outside, then back inside.
Anyway, there's just tons of different things. So it's like, please help, help. And then all of a sudden we roll into this thing. I think we ought to start doing some training and actually like kind of do this and this and this and this type of different deal. And so what ends up happening is it's kind of cool is not within just a couple days of that, all of a sudden you have different ideas that are like, okay, random turn of events. Instead of me being like, oh my goodness, I can't do this and this and this. It's like, okay, we're now going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this. It's literally sometimes you have to reach a burning platform, and it's very interesting. One of the first burning platforms that we actually had was how do we centralize this data? Can I tell you a funny story? Okay, so the story, when I entered this picture, there was basically a bunch of locations, dealerships, so they had big stock units and different things like this. Everything was done on paper tickets, and they were then sending everything back to corporate headquarters to kind of get recorded. When I came onto the scenes, what was happening is they had a zip disk, which if you know what a jump drive is, imagine a itsy bitsy like penny on a dollar type thing. It was 100 megabytes, which for the time was huge. That was the same as like 75 floppy disks, okay? Like it was like, this is the storage device. Anyway, they were taking this zip disk and they were saving a spreadsheet file. They were tracking their inventory on a spreadsheet. What do we have? What's the make? What's the model? How much do we have in it? What's the cost? And they were taking this and sending it around to all the different stores, okay? This process took close to 2 weeks. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars were spent on next day, like, quick, get this to the next thing, you know, like, and basically this is all over the state of Colorado. So instead of it being like, hey, here's one store and 2 blocks down I have another store, this is like, okay, 400 miles this way or 250 miles this way. Like it literally from Rangeley, Colorado, way up in the corner, down to Montrose, which is in another corner, then into Salida, which is right in the middle, down to Canyon, then to Pueblo. Like basically it circled the whole state and they had to just kind of bounce all around. And so like eventually it even grew from there. But what happened is they're sending this zip disk around. So this is the data. Instead of it being centralized data, it was being passed and passed and passed and passed. And the salesperson would be making a deal. Oh yeah, according to my inventory right here, looks like I have a Ford over here and I can sell you this, and I'm into it this much and I'll be doing this. And so they're making this deal off of this spreadsheet, unbeknownst to them, 2 days ago, because they have old data, that Ford that he's trying to work this whole deal on, it's out the door. It's already sold to another customer, okay? So all of a sudden it became very frustrating, very, very frustrating. You were literally chasing your tail in this endless money pit. A burning platform that ended up happening is what are we going to do with this data, okay? The starting of Adilas was on paper tickets and tracking data that was moving, a moving target of data, okay? And finally what ended up happening is we're like, well, why don't we just put the file online and then everybody gets it from one source, okay? And that sounded like a great idea. Like that took out all of the shipping and people could get to data quicker. But however, because it was just a spreadsheet, as soon as you pull it down to your computer, you're technically no longer live and connected. They were still having the same problem. All we did was cut out the mailing and kind of a quicker way to do it. So the next way that it went beyond that was like, you know what, we need to get some sort of a database system where somebody can actually log in and physically say, here's a new unit. Wow, cool, I've got something new. Oh, don't sold this one. I've already got it. I've got this one booked or this one. So all of a sudden, communication needed to happen, and what we did is we had to centralize the data. That was one of the first keys in Adilas, and so that's where we kind of started this whole process. We literally started at paper and also going to the paper and spreadsheet level, and then we said, okay, let's see if we can move this into somewhat of a database type deal. So kind of fun. It's just constantly you only solve the problems that are really a problem. Like if something isn't really a big deal, you're like, whatever. But if it becomes a big deal, it becomes a really big deal. Like they were losing sales, like the exact opposite. I told you about one that went on the one side. Well, what about something like this? Say somebody had just sold something and they traded in a Subaru wagon or something like that, okay? Well, what if you had a client or a customer in another spot that was like, oh, I like all of your cars, but I really wish you had a Subaru. But if the data wasn't updated, the salesperson couldn't even be like, I have one in Salida, I can have it here tomorrow. You know, like basically they were losing deals on both sides because of the lack of communication and centralized data. And so it's kind of fun. It's just kind of fun to see where things go and how things happen. So
true. It's amazing.
But interesting.